don't believe in this out of many one people fuckery with them at about say Jamaica want have as a matter. Not no bumbo clock gossa. It's only one people, one aim and one destiny. In the 1830s after dirty England said them a go stop slavery. Them decide in a them blood clad dirty liberty mind. Said them a go create a matter as a way for advertise Jamaica as this big resort where them can come near man drink. For them for docile way and make it seem like say none of the revolution, the riots them that was happening at the same time did exist. Right? So them telling us that Jamaica have all of these mixtures of people and all of these different people from different races and backgrounds are all living peacefully in a Jamaica. Not no pussy clock gossa. It's only one people. Jamaica is a black nation. Jamaica is an indigenous nation. Uno only make up less than 5% of the population. All uno come from slavery times. Everyone uno a bumbo clap background master picking them. So no can't come tell me no shagry.
What is going on, guys? Wagwan, my youth. I don't have all the Jamaican stuff on. It's still my dark closet that I refuse to wear. All of that stuff, all that jewelry, all the dozens of hats, all the shirts, the hoodie, all that stuff. I'm going to go to a Caribbean festival probably this summer and display some of that outside where hopefully some Jamaicans can buy it. That's the only time I'm going to make money from a Jamaican is actually getting rid of my stuff. So let me preface this video by saying a couple of things. I never planned on making 5 videos about Jamaica. So there's a lot of trolls on the comment section of the last video that I put up, which as I speak now has 20,000 views in 8 days, 9 days, which is why I'm making this video. Because, well, a couple of reasons, not just because of the views, because a lot of people are in the comment. If you read the comment section, it's like, oh, you're not about nothing. You're just trying to get likes and views and blah, 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 blah. On my other channel, I have 116,000 subscribers, and I typically get 40,000 views in a month. So the 20,000 views that I have on one video doesn't really matter. I'm not monetized on this particular channel, so I don't really care. The impetus for me posting my first video was Life About Bob. Where's it at? Right there. Life About Bob. I can't do it right because everything's backwards on my screen. So my videos are a collection of about 32, 34 videos that have to do with this, has to do with my knowledge of being an old man, has to do with credit card debt, has to do with divorce, has to do with loneliness. It has to do with a lot of subject matter that I have knowledge about. And last month it dawned on me, hey, I have knowledge about Jamaica. Let me share that knowledge for other people who are contemplating about moving to Jamaica, who have already started packing and deciding to move down there, or have been there for a year or two or less, where I can provide information that I didn't have when I moved down there. The information of daily life, of all the buffoonery, of all the disrespect that happens, of all the everything that happens, I have a lot of knowledge of. And there's a bunch of Jamaicans who have chimed in on my videos talking about, yep, this man knows what he's talking about. Of course I do. You can't fake that knowledge. So all of the videos combined that I have on my channel, there's only 4 about Jamaica, because I can't squeeze in. I'm making hour-long videos. And if I could make one video 4 hours long or 5 hours long about Jamaica, I would, one video, but I can't. It's a little bit like TikTok, where you're relegated to 10 minutes. So in order to tell a longer story on TikTok, you have to do a 10-minute and a 10-minute and a 10-minute. You know, you have to do 5-10 minutes in order to get out 30 or 40 minutes worth of talking. So the old man content, yes, I'm a John Crow. Yes, I've earned these wrinkles. I've earned all of this. Thank you very much. In order to get out all the information that I want to, I had to put out 4 videos. Now I'm putting out a 5th video only because of the comment section, because, you know, I'm typing in, you know, blah, 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 you know, blah, 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 blah. I'm just typing in and all that stuff. And the comment section, it's a lot easier for me to talk. It's a lot easier for me to push back on the narrative of what people think they know based on watching an hour of my video. Or maybe they've watched 2 of them and now they have 2 hours of knowledge. 2 hours out of 22 years isn't compatible. They don't work. You can't have all the knowledge that you think you have just because I might miss some parts, or because I don't do a deep dive into a particular subject. Like, for example, I didn't do a deep dive into the captured land. I said, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, and then a lot of dumbasses went on my channel and like, oh, well, you're going to get free land in Jamaica and you can't do that in the US and blah, blah, blah. That's another subject that I'm going to cover more in depth, because there are obviously people out there that are dumb that don't know what that's all about. And there might be a lot of Jamaicans that don't know what that's about. So I have to do a little deep dive on some of these very popular comment section remarks. I think I mentioned on my last video, or the one before that, about the young lady who was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. At the point where I met her, it was 2017, 2018, and I really wanted to get out of Jamaica. In fact, I told a friend of mine, it's like, yo, I got to sell off all my stuff and get off this rock. And I wasn't feeling good about it at that point at all. And if I could have had some type of immigration sale or a yard sale or whatever, that's a whole different subject I've talked about before. It's hard to have a yard sale in Jamaica. But if I could just consolidate all of my stuff and just hand it off to somebody and get some payment for all that stuff I worked for and bought, then I would have left in 2017. When I met her is the reason that I stayed, along with a couple of other people that I met at that point. There was some type of, there was something in the atmosphere at that time where, I don't know, it was like, it was like the universe knew that I was like pissed off and lonely at that point, and they just sent me these people, which is kind of weird because it didn't turn out as good as I thought it would. That's another subject matter that I'm going to talk about. But a lot of people were blaming it on that young lady, and it wasn't the young lady. At 2017, I had already been there at that point for 15 years. 16 years in 2017. So I was already to exit. I was already to go. If somebody had just handed me a couple $1,000s for all my stuff and I could have just gotten on a one-way ticket and came back, I would have at that point. That young woman, toward the end, before I left, was the straw that broke my back, where I said to myself, if I can't have a tight, trustful, respectful, real relationship with somebody, friendship in Jamaica with this person, then going forward, it's going to be impossible. Going forward, it will be impossible for me to meet somebody of good character if I can't get it from her. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But let me do the deep dive that I was talking about on this particular video, because I'm going to get back toward the end of this video. I'm going to get back to her. YouTube is kind of a weird place where they have a lot of rules, you know, where you can't pick on somebody or bully somebody or out them or dox them or whatever. You can't do that on YouTube. So I'm relegated. I can't put pictures up and I can't mention her name and all that stuff because it ends up being something close to that. But I will make it very, very clear what that was about. And that's going to be at the end. But let me get back to the matter at hand. Not everyone is like this. Blanket statement. Okay. Blanket statement. So when I said on my videos, and the screenshot that I have is bad mind people, you know, Jamaica's full of scammers and blah, blah, blah. Whatever however that title came across to you, I did not mean. Let me phrase it in such a way that you'll understand. And I'm not calling Jamaicans dogs, but I'm going to use an analogy. So let's say you have, and the way they have in Jamaica, a lot of mongrels, a lot of wild dogs that usually run the night. After around 10, 11 o'clock until whatever time in the morning, they run things. All the stray dogs run things. So if it were, and there's no rabies in Jamaica, but let's say there was, right? And rabies catches on pretty quick. So now a whole boatload of dogs are running around that have rabies. What are you saying to your neighbors, and what are you saying to people you run into on the street? Are you saying that a couple of dogs have rabies? No, you're saying dogs have rabies. So it's a blanket statement. And it doesn't have to be Jamaica. It could have been here. It could have been that, hey, I know there's, probably half a dozen dogs around this neighborhood out of, who knows how many dogs are in the neighborhood that have rabies, right? So I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to tell my neighbors. I'm going to tell those neighbors. I'm going to tell everybody, hey, dogs have rabies. Because that's what I know most of, right? I don't know the ones that don't. I know the ones that do, which in my mind amounts to any one of those dogs I run into are suspect. They might have rabies. So when I say that most Jamaicans are wicked and disrespectful and all this stuff, I said most, not all, most. It's a blanket statement meant to infer that not every Jamaican is nasty and wicked and vile and disrespectful. But the whole of them, as a rule, is how you can't trust, right? So let's say a foreigner comes down to Jamaica and they decide to get in a taxi in Mulbay, right? So I know, and most Jamaican, well, a lot of Jamaicans are going to know that taxi driver is going to try to get $100 US out of that ride to Ochi, right? It's an hour and a half ride. 150 if they can. They're going to lower the price. They're going to go from 150 down to 100, but they're not going to do it less for that. I know that it does not cost $100 worth of gas to go to Ochi. I know that. But the tourist doesn't know that, you see. I know that the phone card, the $100 phone card only comes with, maybe $30 attached to it. But a foreigner doesn't know that. So when somebody offers to sell them a phone card at 180 or 200, they just got ripped off. So then you have to treat every Jamaican as if they're suspect and they're going to do you some type of harm or they're going to rip you off or something. That's what I'm trying to get across on my channel. Have your head on a swivel and be careful about the friendliness, because that's a sneaky way of getting into your pocket sometimes, the friendliness. So a lot of tourists that have been to Jamaica as a tourist would watch my video and say, man, where's this guy coming from? I don't know what he's talking about. I had a great time there. I stayed at the hotel and the Jamaicans were so... You didn't have the real Jamaican experience. So to anybody out there that's of decent character, that has morals and values and good standing and respect and all that stuff, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the ones that don't, which is a good majority of that rock. So let me make that clear. What's the next one? Yeah, so the next one was, oh, he must have lived in a ghetto. He must have lived in some shack or something like that to spend only $200 a month and yada, yada, yada. There are a lot of trolls that I'm not going to get into the troll comment. But no, the house that I was in was probably a good part of 2,500 square feet. Good part. That house, if I could pick that house up and put it here, it would sell for probably $500,000 US. Maybe 600,000, 700,000. It was a big house. So no, I did not live in any kind of ghetto, and I did not live in a shack, and I wasn't in in a bad neighborhood. Most of my experiences were not in my neighborhood. Remember, I told you on another video, I never dealt with people in my scheme ever, because people chat too much, and I knew that when I moved there. So nobody knew, not even my landlord knew my comings and goings. So all my experiences had to do with when I'm out and about. And my stomping ground is typically, I know most of every place, not every place, but I know a lot of places all the way from Trelawney, right at where Mobay ends, St. James, right? St. James to Trelawney. I know all of that area, all the way into St. Anne, all the way into St. Mary. Those three parishes, what I know the most. But I still traveled, and I still went to Portland, and I still went to Kingston, I still went to Spanish Town, I still went to Portmore, and I still went to Black River, and I still went to Savlamar, and I still went to Negril, and I still went to Lucy, and I still went to a lot of different places. So just because people think that, oh, I was kind of somehow relegated to a certain neighborhood or a certain set of people, that's just not true. I ran into all kinds of people. As I mentioned on, I think, my first video, I ran into Safa Powell because I knew his manager, and I would go into Kingston, I would go have dinner at Tracks and Records, with that group of people. And then, other people that I ran into also. Maitland Walker used to run a company called Tourwise. They had a big owl on the bus. And he's from Great Britain, but he had moved to Jamaica when I met him, I think 25, 30 years earlier, and ran a tour company. And I was friends with him and his wife. Like, I knew other echelon of people, but that's not the echelon of people that I'm comfortable being in. I'm comfortable being in with people like me. There were times that I definitely ran into some ghetto-ish type of people and that I was friendly with, but it doesn't mean that I ran with them. Sometimes it was just a matter of helping them out. Or that a lot of people said, oh, but other places in the U.S. and other countries are dangerous too. Other places in other countries all over the world are going to have disrespect and people that are going to scam you and all that stuff. Other. So the deflection, you see, let's not talk about Jamaica. Let's talk about other countries. Let's talk about the U.S. and America and how disgusting people are there. And let's talk about Canada and Great Britain. This video isn't about that. If you want to make a video on Great Britain or Canada or America, then by all means, get a YouTube channel, put some videos up, and let's hear your side about it. But this video isn't about those places. So why are you even, it's a stupid comment. Here's some more interesting comments. And again, some of these are troll type comments. Troll meaning they're trying to get a reaction out of me. And I don't even bother most of the time. I don't even bother answering, responding. That I was there to make money off of Jamaicans. Huh? What? And what? Me make money off of Jamaican? What I said in the beginning of the video, when I sell off all my hats in the dark closet and the jewelry pieces that I have and my shirts and all of that stuff, when I'm able to sell all that stuff off to a Jamaican, that's when I'll start making money from a Jamaican. But I never made money in Jamaica from a Jamaican. There was, I think, 1 or 2 jobs I did the first year I was there. And then I had to stop because Mr. Walker, who I mentioned earlier, said that if some woman get vexed with you, that she could report you for working illegally and you would get deported. So I'm like, oh, hell no, I don't want that. And I didn't need to work. It was something to do. I had money in the bank, so it wasn't a matter I had to work. It's just like, I'm bored. What do I do? So yes, there were 2 times that I made money in Jamaica. 3 times. 3 times when I was doing my work down there. But then I had to stop. So I never made money off Jamaicans. If anything, Jamaicans made money off of me for real. Made money off of me. I wanted to colonize them. I wanted to colonize Jamaicans. What? Colonize? First of all, let me break it down. Black Jamaicans aren't from Jamaica. Okay, you guys were imported. From the Spanish, a little bit from the Spanish, but also mostly Great Britain. You were imported. So how do you colonize a place where you were deported to from a different place? Great Britain colonized a bunch of countries in Africa as well, but they didn't colonize the Black Jamaicans. They colonized the Indians that were originally there, that technically aren't from Jamaica either. They're from South America, but that's a whole different history lesson. I wanted to colonize. I expected them to live up by my standards. See, this is another one which I believe is a troll. Troll comments, meaning they're trying to get a reaction. That I went there expecting them to live up to my standards. My standards? What? What? When I'm here, right, I can go to Walmart and know exactly I can get in and out easy peasy. When I go to Walmart, I know I can get this, I can get that, blah, blah, blah. It's much, much easier. I knew I couldn't do that in Jamaica from day one. There were a lot of different, everything is different. I mean, everything from the driving to the roads, to going to the grocery store, to trying to get something built. Everything is different in Jamaica. So that I wanted them to live up to my standards. That might happen in maybe 200 or 300 more years, but Jamaica's got a long way to go before they could ever live up to my standards. So that's just a weird comment. There is crime everywhere. Another deflection. Like I said before, there is crime everywhere. So why are you talking about the crime in Jamaica if there's crime everywhere? That doesn't make any sense. Why are you talking about us? Why are you talking smack about us? Let me explain that. When I first moved down there, I knew this, and almost every Jamaican knows this too. And again, this isn't a personal. If you take this personal, there's something wrong with you and not me. These are facts. Just for your information, in 1962, and every Jamaican knows what that date means. In 1962, when Great Britain gave up Jamaica, their independence from Great Britain, the murder rate was the lowest in the Caribbean in 1962. Fast forward to 1982, 1992, 2002, it spiked up higher and higher and higher. So when Great Britain had Jamaica, it was a safer place. After they left, more dangerous place. Let me break down these numbers for you, because Jamaicans don't like ever anybody talking smack about them, but I'm going to do that right now. In 2002, and these are numbers, right? You can Google the same numbers. Sorry. In 2002, when I moved down there, there was 145 people, 1,045 people in a year killed. 1,045 in a year. That's 100 a month. In 2010, and it's just a willy-nilly date that I came up with, it was 8 years after I moved there, 1,400. That's more than 100 people every month that are killed in Jamaica. 2020, it was 1,300 people killed in a year. 2021, 1,463. 2022, 1,500. 2023, 1,400. 2024, 1,100, right? So those are just 5 years, right? Just in a 5-year time period, which I just grabbed out of my hat because I'm like, let me do the last 5 years. And then just to make the numbers even, let me go back to 2020. But I also gave you 2010. right? So 10 years earlier, we're still at 1,000. Sorry, we're still at 1,400. So the numbers don't change. By the time 2025 came around, sorry, let me back up. In 2024, Jamaica was rated as the highest murder rate in the Caribbean. Remember what I said earlier about 1962 being the lowest murder rate in the Caribbean? In easily by 2024 and before that, it was the highest murder rate in the Caribbean. In fact, it was one of the highest murder rates in the world. In the world. So when my trolls come onto my channel talking about, oh, well, there's crime everywhere. There's crime everywhere. Let me tell you something. There's about 5 or 6 cities in the United States that have a population roughly of Jamaica. Los Angeles is one of them. The city of, not all the counties, the city of Los Angeles. I think Denver is another one with about 3 million people. I think Los Angeles actually has about 4 million, but close enough. None of those are anywhere near those numbers for those same years. None of them. The average murder rate in a city that's the same size as the whole island of Jamaica at 2.8 million people, the highest murder rate is about 250 people for the whole year. That would only be 2 months in Jamaica. And the average is about 100 to 150. In 2024, all of Metro Atlanta, which would comprise of about 3 million people, had 98 murders. All of Metro Atlanta with about with about 4.5 million people, 98 murders. So when you come to me with this stupid garbage and this deflection about how, oh, the rest of the world is dangerous too, and people get killed, and what about all the mass shootings that you have in America? Let me tell you something about that. Mass shootings defined by the FBI is more murders than 2 people. So let's say 3 people are killed, which is relatively easy to do, right? 3 people, that's a mass murder in the FBI's mind. So you could have a drive-by where 5 people are killed and they consider that a mass murder. That's not a school shooting. That's a mass murder. More than 2. 3 people. 3 people. Not yes. Not yes. So if you're rolling the dice and you're thinking to yourself, let me live in the safest place that I possibly can, would it be Jamaica? Because criminals don't discriminate. You're getting a lot of expats, coming back to Jamaica that have been in, Great Britain, that have been in different places in Europe, that have been in Canada, America for 25, 30 years. Got their Social Security, got their retirement, got their investments, moved out to Jamaica, and within less than a year, they're killed. So the bad man doesn't have any discrimination. They don't care if you're Jamaican. They don't care if you're foreign. That foreigners somewhat are a little safer. But in the long run, if you're looking for a safe place to live, it's going to be somewhere in America, not in Jamaica. Definitely not in Jamaica. What is this? Oh, bribing cops. I should have marked out some of these things. It would have been easier for me. So a couple of people have talked about, oh, well, you come down to Jamaica and you want to run things and you want to do this and do that, and then you bribe the cops and capture land and blah, 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 and bribe the cops. Look here. I don't bribe the cops. When I get pulled over, and almost always for no reason other than driving while white, because I've been pulled over just because of this. Trust me on that. When I get pulled over, the cops are like, good day. And they start the conversation with me. And, can I see your paperwork? Yeah. Here's my registration. Here's my insurance. Here's my fitness. Oh, yeah. Everything seems to be in order. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think you're good here. By the way, I'm kind of thirsty. And stupid me, Because back in the day, when I first moved there, I had a little cooler, or as Jamaicans like to say, an igloo, in the back seat of my car, and I would reach back there and be able to pull out a Pepsi when I wanted to on the road. And I just literally pulled, I pulled out a Pepsi for this cop, and he's like, "Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about." And then I kind of understood what he was talking about, so I kept my bribe money in my ashtray. And I said this on another video. I had $1,000 bill in there, which at that time was about 17 bucks. And I was overpaying them. I was spoiling the pot. I've never, ever asked a cop, "Yo, you think I can give you a little something, something to get out of this ticket?" I've never done that. The cops are bribing me. I'm not bribing the cops, but I just go with the program. So they started this. It wasn't me, Shaggy. So when these people say that I go there and I'm going to take advantage of their people and bribe cops and all that stuff, I'm not bribing the cops. They're bribing me. And there are times where I refuse because I wasn't in the wrong why they pulled me over, and I'm not gonna do the bribe thing. So story time, captured land. And I only made mention of it in my other video because it's part of my life there, and it's part of the buffoonery that I had to go through trying to build up my place. Basically and this is in relative terms, right? It's not facts, but basically what captured land is. So the government of Jamaica will have an area of land, for example, that a developer doesn't want, that's kind of out of the way, that nobody's putting eyes on, that nobody has ever looked at to buy that land, right? The place that I had was out in St. Mary, Rockville, Galena. And Rockville, the reason they named it that is it's a lot of volcanic rock there. So it's very, very difficult to build on. And the government knew that. They knew that this area was going to be very, very difficult to bring in any type of development. So what they'll do is they'll just cordon off 5 acres or whatever the number is, 8 acres of land, square area. And they'll just basically let it be known that, hey, you can chop off a little lot for yourself. I think there's some type of regulation about how much of that you can't just go in there and chop off a whole acre. It's usually about a quarter acre or less that you can chop off for yourself. And typically people will go in and subdivide. So if you did 10 acres and subdivide that by quarter acre lots, there's a good many lots out there to be captured, right? It shouldn't be called captured land. It should be called free land, because that's basically what it is. The government's not trying to make money off of the land, right? They're still going to charge you a tax for the property tax. But until you build something on it, the government's not making a lot of money. Once the building is done, and then they do an assessment on how much that building is worth, then they tax you on that part and the land, but that part is where the government makes their money eventually. The community makes money because I go into a place that I've never been before, and I hire local labor, just like I did with the guy who did my grills, just like I did with the guy who did my block, just like the old man that I would have chop off, because I tried to chop it a couple of times, and oh my God, the work that's involved and the sweat and the wasps coming down. And the wasps in Jamaica, they dive bomb at you. They go, bam. They don't even hang out long enough to get a good spot. It's like the wasp here, like they might land on you and just crawl around. Where's a good spot to sting? No, Jamaican and wasps, they don't play. They just come in and go, bam. And you can't even swat them because it happens so fast. And after a couple of times of chopping my lot, I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. So this old guy that needed work, I paid him. I asked him his rate. How much to chop off my lot? Yeah, I can do it for $1,200. $1,200, you got a deal. So during the course of the day he was out there, I would go get him lunch, and I would go get him a bunch of water, or I would get him Red Stripe or whatever he wanted. Hey, you need, like a lot of times I wouldn't even ask. I would just go bring it to him. And then the 1,200 he wanted, I'd give him 18. I'd give him 2,000 because I thought it was worth it. A friend of mine who's Jamaican, he's like, no, Bob, you're spoiling the pot. Don't pay him more than he wants. He's going to expect that next time. I'm like, no, that's not. My point is, that's a lot of hard work, and he's not charging me enough. So I'm going to, yes, I will spoil the pot because I know what the man is worth to me, not what he thinks. Anyway, I digress. So I had chopped off a little 1/4 acre lot for myself and then wired it off. And then you have to, the wire gets stolen and blah, blah, blah. It just kind of popped in my head. You put some block on the property because eventually you're going to have some work done, right? So you got 100 block, come get delivered. They stack it up and all this stuff. And then what does everybody do in Jamaica? They do the PNP and the JP, Jamaicans, People Labor's Party and all this stuff, colors on the blocks. It's red or it's green spray paint. And they just spray paint on the blocks, whatever they want to spray paint, thinking somehow or another that that's going to be marking their blocks so they won't get stolen. When all it is red and green spray paint. It's just a funny little side note. Anyway, getting back to this captured land. So now you build on it and you have to keep it chopped. You have to keep it cleaned and all that stuff and make sure it's wired off and all that stuff, right? But the point being is the parish council is already involved as well. So the parish council, so captured land is sanctified by the government, it's sanctified by the parish council, and it's sanctified by the tax office. Every year I had to go pay my tax on that little lot that I have. Or it could be not mine anymore. And the parish council has a map of that 5 acres, and they have it subdivided by the time everybody chops off, and they know your name. So when everybody thinks that, there was one comment I didn't even respond to because he's a stupid idiot, but he talked about squatting and talked about, oh, you have to be on the property for 12 years and yada, 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 which is a whole different thing. Squatting and captured land are two different things, to be clear. Then I hijacked my own conversation. So now I've hired the mason, I've hired, the grill guy, I've hired, the man to chop off the lot. I hired a couple other people to paint the grills because that's a big pain in the ass too. And it's oceanside, so the grills get rusted fast. And yeah, so I hired people. I bought from the hardware store. I bought food for the workers and all that stuff. Like I'm contributing to an economy in that area that never had that money before, which is another reason that the parish council is on board with that, because they're like, yeah, this is great for our economy. It wasn't just me. It was 30, 40 other people that were contributing directly to that economy. So it's a shot in the arm to the economy and to the local people there that are getting paid because they're providing a service. That's how business works. So getting back to, taking money from Jamaicans, no, I threw a bunch of money on that rock. Then somebody else said, oh, and then you profited by selling your place. Yeah, because I said on the other video that I sold it for 1.2 million, which is about 10 grand. And I had spent about 7,500 because I kept a running list of all the expenses that I paid. And at the end, I'm like, okay, 7,500. But I've taken care of this lot for 8 years. I've had to go rewire it. I've had to go chop it. It was a baby of mine for 8 years. So why don't I deserve something for my labor? So yeah, the 7.5 to 10 grand that I sold it for, yeah, I made $2,500. So what? 2,500 is like nothing. Making money off of that lot would have been selling it for 30 grand or 40 grand. That would have made money. Anyway, on to bigger and better things. So I know the next topic I was going to cover because there's a whole bunch of comments and all the other videos that I made about, oh, this white guy, this pinky that comes in. Yeah, I am a little pink today, huh? This pinky that comes in, telling us, about our island and our people and yada, 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 and these white men. So, and then there's some comments from people, obviously from other countries, that have no idea what they're talking about. Jamaica is not a monolith. Yes, the majority population is black, but if you go to 1962, about a third of the country was white, because hello, the Brits. And there's still a good large population of white Jamaicans, native white Jamaicans, native Chinese Jamaicans, native Indian Jamaicans. So for the ignorant people that don't know that think that Jamaica is all black, right? Another thing, and I think I pointed this out on one of my videos, let me back up. I have an uncle who's black. Well, he's gone now. But my uncle, who is my father's stepbrother, in-law, brother-in-law. My father's sister married a black man before I was born. And they produced 3 children. And so I have, and 2, Rocco is kind of a Milano. He could pass for anything, but Terry and Christine, definitely black, nappy hair, the whole 9. So I have a black uncle and 2.5 black cousins. I was watching black TV shows when I was young, when I was like 10, 11 years old, because I've always had an affinity for black women. Always, always, always. I was married to a black woman for 25 years. I have a mixed son. So when these people talk about, oh, this white man thing, none of my videos talked about black, nothing. I never said black. I said Jamaicans. But through their ignorance, they think all Jamaicans are black, and they're not. So I want to put that to rest. And then there's a lot of comments that just simply say, "Yeah, bati boy," which is basically calling me gay. Which, when a Jamaican doesn't have an intelligent argument about something, or even an intelligent thing to say, they revert back to slinging some type of, the SYM. There's a lot of SYMs as responses. SYM. Suck your mudda. I'm not even gonna bother. It's not worth all the brain cells to try and dumb myself down to some of these idiots. All right. So lastly, but not leastly, and you can stop the video at this point. I'm going to talk briefly, maybe for about 10 or 15 minutes, about the young lady that I spoke of in the beginning of the video, and a bit of the story about why we're not together. Strike that. A bit of the story, how she managed to get me off of Jamrock. Finally. Because there's been a lot of comments about, woman banyo. Like, it's sort of true, but it's not. As I said before, she made it to the point where if I can't trust and respect and have some type of what I thought was a true friendship with somebody in Jamaica after, at that point, 21 years, then what is the point in going on any further? If that's the person who I respected the most out of all the people that I've met, in Jamaica, there's no use. It wouldn't matter if I was there for another 2 years or another 5 or another 10. I'm not going to meet somebody like that again. I'm not going to strike that. I'm not going to meet somebody better than that again, because at the end of the day, she wasn't better than anybody else. She just did it better than anybody else. Trust that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for round two, the bonus round. Let me talk about, I'm going to talk in the end of this video. And if you don't want to hear all the drama that I went through with this young lady, then you can just stop here. You don't have to watch the rest of this video. This is for those that want to know, because apparently it's a curiosity. There's been more than a few comments about asking who this person is. This woman, how do I even start? So let me preface my story with a couple of things. First of all, because of my 22-year history in Jamaica, and because my affinity is always toward a Black woman, I just find Black women more appealing, more gorgeous, the bone structure, facial features, like everything about them to me is more appealing. And it's been that way since I can remember. As I said earlier, if you didn't catch the first part, I was married to a Black woman for 25 years, and I've always dated Black women. There's been a few exceptions, but it wasn't pleasant. So this isn't new to me at all. I didn't go to Jamaica to test anybody. But I will say that Jamaican women are a different vibe than a Black American woman. They're a different vibe. And I had, in the very beginning, up until I met this particular person, which was basically, what would be the math on that? 8 years? I think I'd already been there for 8 years by the time I met her, about 7, 8 years. So I had been through a few females prior to her, more than a few females. There's probably one or two out of, I don't know, out of maybe 10 or 12, there's maybe one or two that maybe I didn't. So to be fair, I treated every woman with the utmost respect, with the utmost sincerity that I could at the time. I didn't disrespect any female that I was with, but there's probably been one or two, if I think back, that wanted to form some type of relationship, and I pushed away from that. I pushed away, and I shouldn't have. Having said that, there's also been quite a few who have taken advantage of me, and quite a more few who tried to take advantage of me, but I saw the red flags and I stopped. You know how it goes. If you're a Jamaican man, you know how it goes. So anyway, now let me continue with my story. This is 2017, 2018 by this time. And I'm not feeling Jam Rock at all. I want to leave. I want to exit. I want off of that rock for good, because nothing good was coming out of my experience. I had no motivation to stay any longer. I just didn't. I felt alone. I felt I was kind of in a funk. I was, a little depressed about my situation. And it wasn't going to get better that I could see. So anyway, during that time period, I had a friend of mine, elderly gentleman, who at that point had gone through a couple of health issues. And he was walking across, he was trying to manage his way to walk across the street one day. And, the traffic down at the bottom was it was a bit dangerous. And so this young lady came up to my friend and said, "Let me help you get across the street." So she helped him out and all that stuff. And so they chit-chatted, and I guess they got on a bus together going somewhere. And later on, he reported back to me. He said, "Bob, I met this girl. Oh, she's just so pretty," and blah, blah, blah. And he's going on and on. And I'm like, "Well, good for you. Good for you." And then I said to him, "Does she have a friend?" "Yeah, she had a friend there with her. I don't know who she is. I don't know her name or anything like that." And I said, "Well, can't throw a bone this way to your brother?" And so he said, "Well, here's her name and her number. and you can contact her, meaning the one he was speaking of, to see who this friend is. And I said, okay, fair enough. So I called her up and I said, hey, my name is Bob. I'm a friend of that gentleman that you helped across the street, blah, blah, blah. She said, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So we had a little discussion. And I said, well, he told me that you had a friend that might be interested in meeting with me. And she's like, well, let me check. So she made sure that it was okay to give out the number of this friend, and the friend and I ended up having a phone conversation. And I found out very, very quickly that this was not going to be a match, that she was kind of a money grabber. She wanted to go out, I don't know, KFC or something like that. Like right off the get-go, she wanted stuff from me. Didn't even meet her yet. So I just kind of blocked that number. But in the meantime, this other young lady, who was the lady who my friend was talking about, ended up talking. And we spoke on the phone for hours. She just struck me as very, very intelligent. She struck me as beyond her years, in a way, in a good way, beyond her years in a way that I could have really, really deep, good conversation with. And so I ended up meeting with her, and I'm like, wow. So in my mind, I'm thinking, ooh, this girl is gorgeous. This girl is just, she's fine too. She got a nice shape about her. She got a little tiny voice. Like she was just, insofar as the women that I've met, I used to do photography, and I've been to Miss Jamaica pageants quite frequently. There's a woman out there, Nicole Stoddard, who I met at one of those pageants, and we became friends. Her and I never shot together. But anyway, Nicole Stoddard is probably in that range of good looks that this young woman had. But I just didn't run into that a whole lot, and I was just kind of smitten by her. The problem was, two biggest problems. One of them, she was dating a policeman at the time. And that wasn't good. But the other problem is she was way too young for me, way too young. And I couldn't see us having a relationship. But the friendship vibe was definitely there. So at that point, she was going to school. She wanted to become a veterinarian. And so she was going to school in Port Antonio, somewhere out that direction. To become a veterinarian, she had to stay at that school Monday through Friday, and she could come home on weekends. So I would offer to take her out to her school and drive the hour plus, because it was way past Anato Bay. I would offer to take her out there on a Sunday because I enjoyed the company. The drive was fantastic to take her out there. Then, of course, I'm driving back by myself. Anyway, she ended up leaving the school, I think, after the first year. And she ended up telling me some stories about her time at that school. She told me one story, which I still don't know if I believe or not, but she told me that she had an assignment coming up and she really needed to get it turned in on this Monday, but she didn't have a laptop. And so she borrowed the laptop of this other boy that was at the school, and he required that she sleep with him. And so she's like, yeah, I had to sleep with him to use his laptop. And I'm like, wow. And it made me feel bad. It made me feel like, that's kind of disgusting that she would have to do that. So at a certain point, I didn't even know her that well. This is the first probably 6 months we knew each other, maybe a little longer. And I brought her a laptop. It was a small laptop. It didn't cost a whole lot. I think it was $175, something like that. But it was one of those little notebook type laptops. And I brought it to her. And I don't remember if I gave it to her on a birthday or Christmas or something. I think I just handed it to her. And I said, here, you'll never have to do that again. That was the very beginning phase of me being a simp. Yeah. And I own that. Same as I own this John Crow look, because I earned it, so I own the fact that I cared too much. Anyway, getting back to the story, she eventually got involved. Well, she was involved when she was at the agricultural school into the Farm Queen pageants. And she attended quite a few of them. I think at least 3 that I know of. And at least 2 of them I was involved in, along with my friend. We ended up combining our finances and put together an outfit for her, the dress, all the stuff she wore at the Farm Queen pageant. We financed for her. And I met her boyfriend cop at one of those pageants, including her mom, including her sister, the whole family out in Kingston. And it's kind of a nice event. If you've never been to a Farm Queen festival, it's kind of like a fair, so to speak. So they got different booths set up. You can buy food, you can buy this, you can buy that, blah, blah, blah. They got bounce about for the kids. It's kind of like a fair, like a carnival type atmosphere. And then at nighttime, they have the Farm Queen pageant. And the one that we attended specifically, she got second runner up. Good for her. So I just supported her the best way I could, because I cared for her, because she came across as a very genuine, true, real person to me. That I was attracted to her wasn't difficult because it became a melting of the minds for us. And that's what made it really cool, that I could be with this woman as a friend and not have an ulterior motive with her, to where it just became a very nice platonic relationship. Eventually, she found out that her cop boyfriend was cheating on her. Actually, not just cheating, but that he had a family. And then she broke up with him. And then soon after that, he committed suicide. So she jumped from him over to Special K. And I won't say his name because me and him had a talk after all of this drama. And it turns out all the stuff that I said about her on this other platform that I'm going to tell you about very soon was actually true. And he and I had good conversation after the fact of all this drama. But anyway, we call him, or I just nickname him, Special K. So she got with him like right away. I believe his number was already in her phone as a backup. I think that. I don't think she just met him on the road one day. I think she had him as a backup. The cop was older than her by probably 15 years. Might be 20. About 15, maybe 18 years older. The next man, Special K, was a good part of 20 years, if not better, older than her. As a lot of young women in Jamaica do, they get with an old guy because the old guy can support them financially. They got no use for a young man, unless it's love. But anyway, and then I just kind of made the comment, wow, what happened to my application? Did it get lost in the mail? And it was kind of tongue-in-cheek. I didn't really mean it because, again, she's much, much younger than I am. And I didn't feel like there was, even though we got along really, really good, I didn't feel like there was much of a future for us together, insofar as, that we would cross over and become girlfriend and boyfriend or husband and wife or anything like that. So it was never really about that. But when she got with him, she would complain after about a year or so. She would complain about him. And the complaints ran all over the place. He kept her locked down. He spied on her and this and that, blah, 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 blah. It went on and on. At one point, it was her birthday coming up. And I said, so what's he going to do for you? Oh, he doesn't never do anything for me. Well, do you do anything for him? And she's like, oh, yeah. I bought him, a pack of Marinas. I bought him this. I bought him that. Blah, blah, blah. Little things, because she couldn't afford much, but little things nevertheless, or at least something, and he wasn't doing anything. So I decided to put her in a hotel. And it was going to be an all-inclusive hotel for the weekend as a gift to her for her birthday, amongst other things that I bought for her many, many times. It's just a simpy type of stuff that I did for her that I regret now, because what I learned about her, she never begged from me, per se. it wasn't her character to beg. It was her character to talk about some issue that she had and then get me to help her resolve that issue by telling me about it, because she knew at that point that I was an empath and she's a narcissist. And it was easy for her to manipulate me in such a way she didn't really have to ask. I did a lot of stuff for her on my own, yes, but I did a lot of stuff for her out of sympathy for her situation. Sympathy and empathy for her situation. But because she knows how to manipulate men very, very good, I never saw it. I was blinded to it. There was one time, I think it was about a year and a half or so after we met, she knew I did photography. And she's like, Bobby, I'd really like to do a photo shoot with you. And I said to her, I don't really do photo shoots anymore. I kind of quit doing that about a year ago. And she's like, why? And I said, because the girls flake on me and it's just not worth the hassle. And she said, well, I won't flake on you. I'm your friend. And I'm like, okay, I would really love to shoot you because you are gorgeous, but you have to promise me that you won't pull out at the last minute, because if we do this, we're going to do it big time. So she's like, oh, I promise. I said, okay. So I rented a villa up above Roccabessa. Up above Roccabessa, up on a hill, there's a big, giant, nice, how many bedrooms? I think it's either 5 or 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, swimming pool, 2-story, all this stuff. Nice place that I rented for the weekend for that shoot. And a friend of mine who I had introduced her to, another young lady that I knew, I got them together, and she wanted to go to be on this photo shoot. And so it was her, my friend, coming to the photo shoot also, and then another friend. Anyway, there were 3 different females and myself at the villa for that weekend. And I paid for the food, and I paid for this, and I paid for that, blah, blah, blah. On the second night, I think it was Saturday night, we were there. It was late at night. The other 2 women had gone to bed, and she wanted to do some lingerie stuff. And so I said, okay, let's go in the bedroom and, blah, blah, blah. So she dressed up in this different lingerie, blah, blah, blah. And I'm, doing my photography thing and doing different shots and stuff like that. And I've seen her naked before, and she has a nice body and all that stuff. But, again, this is as much of a platonic friendship that a man could have with a woman. Despite the fact that I was attracted to her, it didn't skew anything. But she seduced me on that shoot. And we slept together one time, and it wasn't that great. One time. I knew her by the time we ended our relationship, our friendship. I knew her for 5 years. And in 5 years, that's the only time. And my belief is she did that on purpose as a thank you for doing the photo shoot and spending all that money. That's my belief. But it wasn't that great. It was, I wouldn't have repeated it again. It wasn't that great. Anyway, going forward, she's still with this guy, Special K, and she's doing her complaining about him, and she needs to move away from him and blah, blah, blah. But at a certain point, she went to get, what was it? LPN, licensed practicing nurse. And she was going to that school on Saturdays, specifically, because she worked at a bank up in Highgate Monday through Friday. So on Saturdays, she would go to this school. And it took her longer than necessary to go through the LPN course. I don't know. I guess he paid for it. But it took her longer because it was only Saturday that she could go. So I did what I could, and I would send her a credit. So every Sunday night, I would send her $1,000 credit. And she's like, what's that for? And I said, well, I'm supporting you. Like, obviously, I didn't know you were enrolled in this school at this point, and I guess he's paying for the tuition, and you're living with him, so you don't really have any expenses. But I still want to do what I can. So I offer that up. So $1,000 credit Digicel went to her every Sunday night like clockwork. And that went on for about 2.5, almost 3 months. And then finally she said, yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. I'm like, okay, cool. That's the only part of character that I ever saw from her, that ever came from her. as far as doing the right thing. She just cut that off. And so that was cool. Eventually, this is going into, I think, her third 3.5 years with her boyfriend, her live-in boyfriend, and she's complaining about him even more. She's got to break it off with him at some point, yada, yada, yada. So I said to her, I don't know, because, at one point she graduated this LPN course, and I was her taxi sometimes, and I went by to pick up her diploma and all of this stuff and her picture, and I paid for a frame to have it framed and all this stuff, her graduation picture. So I said to her, well, this LPN thing, it's better than nothing, but what do you want to do? Do you want to mop up vomit off of a hospital floor, or clean up blood, or like, what is your purpose of having an LPN? Why not RN? Oh, RN, I can't afford that. I'm like, I didn't ask you that. Would you want to be an RN? And she said, sure. And I said, all right, go find a school and I'll put you in the school. And she had her choice, because I didn't tell her to go to UE. She could have. They got a campus in Ochi. But she found a nursing school up in Brownstown. I'll think of the name of it. Right now it eludes me. I'll think of the name of it. And so on a trip that I came down, we went up to register at the school, and I had to pay, what was it, $340,000? I think it was $340,000 for 1 year. And I was going to put it in her for 4 years. Remember, associate's degree is 2 years, and a bachelor's degree is another 2 years. So in 4 years, she would become a nurse. All I was going to pay for is her tuition. She had to manage her rent, wherever she's going to stay, because Brownstown to where she was at was a long distance. And so she had to manage her rent, her phone cards, her food, like everything else, somebody else is going to have to pay for. It's not going to be me. But I will pay for the tuition because I want to see you get through. We even talked about when she graduated that she would move here and that I would marry her for the purposes of getting a green card. But I also told her where Lenox Mall was at. I told her the expensive places she could go to find a sugar daddy-ish, to find a husband who has some cash. Because I was never opposed to her being with another man, you see. And what I said earlier about her, us, no, we would never, that would never happen. We were almost like two women, where we would kind of collude on certain things, even to the point where I paid for her tuition. She's like, yeah, I'm going to tell my man, that I don't quite have enough. I'm going to have him ante up some of that $340,000. So she hit him up for $100,000, telling him that she was shy on her tuition. That's what she did. She just used guys, but she was using me without my knowledge. There's this weird type of thing in Jamaica where when a man takes a woman out to eat, that dinner is worth front. And I don't like that. I think that's kind of vile. I just feel like that's another one of those things that are not in my lane that I talked about in my other video. That is a cultural thing that I'm not on board with. Just because a man pays for you to go out to dinner doesn't mean that he gets front. Like, that's just not a thing to me. The fact that I paid for her tuition, people were saying, oh, and you didn't even get front. I'm like, come on, grow up. Like, it's not all about that. This girl had, and the reason I did that, getting back to when I met her and how we had these conversations and how I felt she was so intelligent, it was almost like this little seed, this seed that's getting germinated, this seed that's getting, rooted in, and it just needs some extra sunlight, or it just needs some extra plant food or something like that to spring up and do what it does, And so I just felt like she was this little seed. She had potential. She had so much more potential than anybody else that I'd ever met. She's very, very smart. And for her to waste that would have been a shame. So without some type of scholarship or some type of somebody coming along to help her, like push her up, she would take some time getting somewhere in life. She still would because of that, but she needed that push, and I became that push for her because I cared about her. Here's where the problem came in, and I'm getting on to too much talk on this video. Here's where the problem came in. At a certain point, she decided she's going to break up with this guy. And when she broke up with him, about the same time that she was trying to pull away from him, she met this other guy, Dane. And then she met this other guy, Michael. Michael, as it turns out, was a friend of mine. Same age, big man, because she always gets with big man. But I didn't know that at the time. It's a whole story I could get into, but then I would bore you. How that came about and how I ended up knowing about that. But long story short, she's telling me as if I'm her girlfriend about, oh yeah, and Michael, he treats me so good and he opens my car door and does this for me and does that for me. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been doing that for a long time. Like, she didn't ever brag about me, but yet she's bragging about what Michael does. And then she had the nerve to go to Shades. So her and I had spoken about going to Shades at one point. And I said, yeah, next time, we'll go to Shades. And then she's bragging to me about how they went to Shades. Showed me pictures of her dressed in her sexy dress going to Shades and tell me the whole story about the night. I'm like, wow, we were supposed to go there together. Well, he took me there, and what was I going to do? And I be honest, tell him, no, me and a friend of mine are planning on going here. It's your first time, like that would have been her first time for me to take her there. But yet she went with Michael. And then she's talking about, oh, and the next day I made him breakfast. Wow. So you barely know Michael. After a couple of weeks, you were already making him breakfast? So not only did she sleep with him that quickly, but she's cooking for him. And in the 5 years I've known her, she never cooked for me. And that's another weird little cultural thing, that if a woman cooks for you in Jamaica, that really means something. And so I just kind of found it as an insult that she would tell me that, but also that she would do that for him, but never for me. Regardless that we weren't a couple, she should have offered that for all the different things I did. Just saying. In fact, in that 5-year period, she never bought me anything. Of all the stuff that I did for her, including putting her in school, she never bought me one thing, not even a pair of glasses, not even a Pepsi, not even nothing. Nothing she's ever bought me, ever. And I don't need anything, but that's not really the point. The point is that if she had offered it up, I probably, you know what, it's okay, save your money. I probably would have refused it, but she should have still offered it, in my opinion. Anyway, she gets serious-ish with Michael. At the same time, she's seeing Dane. And Dane is a Jamaican, but he lives foreign. So she goes off with barely knowing. In fact, I was there when she went on her first date with him. This is the funny thing. This is how sketchy she is. So she's telling me the story about how she met Dane. She's at a restaurant with Michael. And while she's at the restaurant with Michael at a table, some guy walks in there and he's looking around for a table to sit at. He doesn't see anything. So she raises her hand and she's like, hey, there's a table over here. So Dane walks over to the table. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, no problem. So Michael gets up to go to the bathroom, and then her and Dane start talking. And Dane takes up her number. And within less than a couple of days, she's meeting with Dane and asked me if I would go meet with her at the bottom where she's at, coming down from Brownstown on the main, to go meet with Dane to make sure she's safe. And I said, I can't. I'm not even near you right now. I'm in Trelawney, so I can't come meet you. But do me a favor. When he pulls up, come up behind his car and take a picture of his license plate. And she never did. But guess what happened? She ran off with Dane for, was it 2 days? I think it's 2 days. She went off to, I guess Dane has some relatives in St. Elizabeth, and then she went off to Negril with him and spent like 2 or 3 days with him. And the apartment near Brownstown, when I put her in school, that I had paid the first month's rent on was $12,000. So I asked her after Dane flew off the island, so how much did Dane give you? Because I know he gave you something. Oh yeah, he gave me 12 grand. Wow, 12 grand. So a month's worth of rent, that's all you got? Your poom poom only worth 12 grand? Anyway, eventually she basically threw me away. Shortly after all the Dane and Michael situation went on, she threw me away because I had written a love letter to her that had to do with my love for her as a person, not boyfriend, girlfriend. This was at the end of 2022 because I was jealous. I was jealous not that she got with those men, because I told her she needs a financier. She needs somebody to pay for all this stuff that I'm not paying for. All I promised is the 4 years of tuition. All the other stuff, she has to find a man to pay for. So I had no problem that she got with these men. I had the problem that she bragged about them because it was a sign of respect that she showed to them, which I never got. So that made me all up in my feelings, and I wrote her kind of a love letter on Christmas of 2022. And I told her how I felt about her. And I said, I'm not, trying to say that I want you as a girlfriend and all that stuff, but I love you, but my feelings have grown more intense. And I'm trying to articulate to her my disappointment with the lack of respect that I'm getting is why I wrote that letter. And it was probably wrong for me to write the letter, but I did. And she responded. She's like, oh, she's like, I really appreciate that. And I love you too. But, it's a different type of love and da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, I get that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, going forward in 23, I'm on a call with her because it's a long story. I don't have to go deep dive into that part. But the end result was, that was January 23, where she dissed me to the point where I couldn't just let it go. And so by the time April, May comes around, when Farm Queen is going on, I went and to Nato Bay. They were having the Farm Queen thing in Nato Bay, and I went to meet with her. And she was actually a coach for the Queen contestants at that point. And I went over and had a little chit chat with her. And I basically told her I wanted some time with her to talk about us and our friendship that was devolving at that point. And she promised me some time at some point, and it took probably another 2 weeks before she found the time for me. And we met over at Bay Beach in Ochi, and we had about an hour-long conversation. And toward the end of the conversation, I said to her, most women, most people would feel a little guilt about having taken from me for so long. And she said, almost without hesitation, I don't feel no guilt. I'm like, wow, that hit hard. That hit me like a bullet. So that night, and for the following couple months, I started a TikTok channel calling her out, because it was so vile and so disgusting and so nasty and vicious that she would, man, 2023 was the worst year ever. And that's when I decided to leave Jamaica, because I felt like this person who I'd known for 5 years, that I had done so much for, that I had been the best person in her life that she ever knew, could just dig it in and twist it around the way she did. There's no hope for nobody else. Anyway, again, I was very, very careful not to say her name. I was very careful, and I want to just out her and put her picture up and all that stuff, but I have to be careful on YouTube. But I do have a TikTok channel. If you want to know all the little details that I probably missed on this, you can go to that. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not with the phone. You can screenshot that. Oh, it's going to be backwards, isn't it? Sorry about that, guys. But these are all the videos that I had about her back in the day, you know, back a couple of 3 years ago. And so you can kind of get an idea for this whole story of what happened. So the name of the channel is Bobby in Atlanta, at star 2 R's _ Jamaica. Let me see if I can show it better. Yeah, STARR _ Jamaica. And you can find out the nitty-gritty details about who she is. The St. Mary Scammer, that's what I call her. So that is my push out the door of why I left Jamaica after 22 years. It wasn't the sole reason, which is why a lot of the comments that I got about, oh, it must have to do with a woman and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's not the true story. The true story is all that foolishness and all that crap that I had to put up with for so long, for 17, 18 years. I was already ready to leave. That she came along and treated me so shitty became, you know what? I don't even care about my stuff anymore. All that money I was trying to make from the stuff I had in my apartment, screw that. I gave it away. I had 2 or 3 people that I knew left that I could just, hey, you know, give that key to that person when you're done. You take up the TV, you take up the couch, take up the refrigerator, take up the microwave, take up all the tools. All that stuff I gave away because it wasn't worth it to me to sit around forever and not get any better mentally. So that incident with her just kind of, hey, you got to get out of here. I'm like, yeah, I know. Help me. Help me leave. And that's what she did. She just helped me left. Help me left. So that's it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But for whatever it's worth that people want to know, now you know. And I almost guarantee there won't be a part 6 to this. Even though I said on part 4, there wouldn't be any more. Or even though I said on part 3, there wouldn't be a part 4, and there was. I lied. So, yeah, there's really nothing much more to say. I've kind of put it all out there. So, yeah, put your comments in the comment section. Be respectful. Be respectful. Because if you call me a bati boy or go suck your mother, then you're just going to get deleted and blocked. Anyway, peace, guys. I'm out.